was still holding the plastic bag with Marcus's wedding ring, his watch, and his wallet, still warm from his body, when the text came through. I need to pick up my brother's BMW. What time works for you today? The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital parking lot blurred through my tears as I read those words again and again. My husband of 23 years had been dead for exactly 47 minutes, and his sister Diane was already asking about his car. The call had come at 2:14 p.m. I remember because I was stirring sugar into my second cup of coffee, watching the little whirlpool form in the ceramic mug Marcus had given me for our anniversary. The one with "World's Most Patient Wife" written in fading gold letters. Dr. Harrison's voice had been professionally gentle, the kind of tone they must teach in medical school for delivering the worst news of someone's life. "Mrs. Chen, this is Dr. Harrison at St. Mary's Hospital. I need you to come in regarding your husband, Marcus Chen." The spoon had clattered against the tile floor, sugar granules scattered like tiny diamonds. "Is he... what happened? Is he okay?" That pause, that terrible knowing pause that told me everything before the words came. "Your husband was brought in by ambulance from his office. He suffered a massive myocardial infarction, a heart attack. We did everything we could, but I'm so very sorry." 53 years old, marathon runner, vegetarian for the last 5 years. Blood pressure medication taken religiously every morning with his green smoothie. None of it had mattered when his heart decided to stop in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon conference call. I'd driven to the hospital on autopilot, running 2 red lights without even realizing it. The 12-mile journey felt both endless and instantaneous. They'd led me to a small room, not the emergency area, but a quiet space with soft chairs and a box of tissues on every surface. The chaplain was already there, waiting. Marcus looked like he was sleeping, except for the stillness. That absolute stillness that belongs only to death. His face was peaceful, almost surprised, as if he'd just remembered something important he'd forgotten to tell me. I'd kissed his forehead, still warm, still smelling of that sandalwood cologne I'd bought him every Christmas for 2 decades. His hands, those gentle hands that had held mine through chemotherapy 5 years ago, through my father's funeral, through 1,000 ordinary Tuesday afternoons, they were already beginning to cool. The nurse, a young woman with kind eyes and a tiny cross necklace, had handed me the plastic bag with such reverence you'd think it contained sacred relics. And maybe it did. 23 years of marriage reduced to 3 items in hospital-grade clear plastic. His wallet, brown leather worn soft at the corners, still holding the fortune cookie slip from our first date that he'd laminated and carried for over 2 decades. "Your heart will find its home." His Rolex, not a real one, but the knockoff I'd bought him in Chinatown when we were broke newlyweds, which he wore every day instead of the genuine article his company had given him for his 20th work anniversary. And his wedding ring, the white gold band we'd chosen together, now somehow heavier than it had ever been on his finger. I was standing there in that harsh hospital parking lot, trying to remember how to breathe, how to walk, how to exist in a world without Marcus when my phone buzzed. "Diane." I almost didn't read it, but habit is powerful even in grief, especially in grief when your mind grasps for anything normal, anything that makes sense. The text was barely 3 lines, but each word hit like a physical blow. "Sarah, I heard about Marcus. Devastating. I need to pick up my brother's BMW. What time works for you today? No. How are you holding up? No. Is there anything you need? No. I'm here for you. Just the car." The BMW 540i that Marcus had saved for 3 years to buy, washing it every Sunday morning like a ritual, playing jazz while he detailed the already pristine interior. I typed and deleted 7 different responses. What I wanted to say would have required words that hadn't been invented yet, some new vocabulary for this particular species of cruelty. Instead, I just stared at the screen until it went dark, reflecting my face back at me, a woman I didn't recognize, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My phone rang, Diane again. This time, I made the mistake of answering. "Sarah, did you get my text? About the car?" Her voice was breathless, urgent, like she was calling about a limited-time sale at Nordstrom. "Diane," I managed, my voice raw, unrecognizable. "Marcus he's gone. I'm still at the hospital." I know it's terrible, just terrible. But listen, I have someone interested in buying it, and they can only see it tomorrow morning. You understand, right? These things, they need to be handled quickly. The plastic bag in my hand crinkled as my grip tightened, Marcus's belongings shifting inside like bones. The house smelled wrong when I finally made it home at 9 p.m. that night, like someone else's perfume had invaded our sanctuary, mixing with the lingering scent of Marcus's morning coffee, still sitting cold in the pot. I'd ignored 23 calls while making funeral arrangements, sitting in that sterile office picking out caskets like I was shopping for furniture. Oak or mahogany? Silk or satin lining? Would he prefer the silver handles or the brass? As if Marcus cared about hardware when he was beyond caring about anything ever again. But the moment I stepped through our front door, I knew. It wasn't just one thing. It was 1,000 tiny violations. The mail on the entry table had been rifled through, envelopes torn open and discarded. Marcus's jacket, which he'd hung on the coat rack Monday night after dinner, was gone. Even the spare change bowl we kept by the door had been emptied. My phone lit up with another text. This time, Marcus's brother James. Sarah, I'm taking Dad's golf clubs. Marcus wouldn't want them gathering dust. Already got them from the garage. Already got them? I hadn't given anyone our garage code. Those clubs, vintage McGregor's from 1962, had belonged to Marcus's father, passed down the day before he died. Marcus had never even used them, just kept them polished and displayed in his office like a shrine. I walked through our house like a detective at a crime scene, cataloging the disturbances. The living room photos had been touched, fingerprints on the glass where someone had picked up our wedding portrait. The kitchen drawers were closed but not quite right, that junk drawer where we kept spare keys, slightly ajar. Someone had been looking for something specific. The texts kept coming. A symphony of greed played out in notification sounds. From Marcus's cousin Linda. Hi, hun. So sorry for your loss. Quick question. Marcus borrowed my grandmother's china set 10 years ago for a party. I'll swing by tomorrow to pick it up. She was lying. That china was a wedding gift from Marcus's grandmother directly to us. I had the card she'd written, her shaky handwriting saying, "For my newest granddaughter, may your table always be blessed." From his nephew Tyler, who Marcus had paid through college. Aunt Sarah, Uncle M promised me his watch collection when I graduated. Can I come get them? I know where he kept them. How did he know where Marcus kept anything? We'd seen Tyler exactly twice in the last 5 years, but it was Marcus's home office that made my blood turn to ice water. The door was closed. I always left it open to let light into the hallway. Inside, chaos. Not violent, but methodical. Every drawer of his filing cabinet hung open, papers scattered across his desk like fallen leaves. His laptop, the silver MacBook Pro he used for everything, was gone. The charging cable still snaked across the desk, plugged into nothing. They'd tried to be careful, these grave robbers. Papers were disturbed, but not destroyed. Drawers searched, but not ransacked. Someone had been looking for something specific, something they needed to find before I got home, before I could find it first. The built-in bookshelf where Marcus kept his first editions, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, signed copies worth thousands, had gaps like missing teeth. At least 12 books gone, including the leather-bound Gatsby that Marcus had saved for 6 months to buy me for our anniversary. But it was the safe that made me call 911. Hidden behind a false panel in the closet, Marcus had installed it himself, proud of his handiwork. The steel door bore fresh scratches around the lock mechanism. Someone had tried to pry it open with what looked like a screwdriver, leaving gouges in the metal like claw marks. They'd failed, but barely. Another hour, and they might have succeeded. "Ma'am, when did you discover the break-in?" The officer, Detective Morrison, looked about 12 years old, his notebook pristine like he'd just unwrapped it. "It's not exactly a break-in," I heard myself say, voice hollow. "They had keys, or the garage code. Their family." He stopped writing. "Family members entered without permission and took property?" While I was at the hospital, while my husband's body was still, I couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word warm again. Detective Morrison's partner, an older woman with knowing eyes, stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, in cases like these, timing matters. Who knew you were at the hospital?" Everyone. I'd called Marcus's office. Word had spread through the family phone tree faster than wildfire. By the time I'd left the hospital, 43 people had been notified of his death. 43 people who knew I wouldn't be home, who knew the house would be empty. The laptop, I said suddenly. Marcus's laptop is missing. He worked from home every Friday. Everything was on that laptop. Finances, passwords, documents, client information for his consulting firm. The detectives exchanged a look I couldn't read. Mrs. Chen, Detective Morrison asked carefully, was your husband involved in anything that someone might want to hide? Any business dealings that might be complicated? No, he was meticulous, honest to a fault. He once drove back to a grocery store to return excess change. But even as I defended him, I thought about the safe, about what someone had desperately wanted inside it, about the laptop with its password-protected files, and about Diane's text, sent while Marcus's body was still cooling. What time works for you today? They'd been waiting, watching, planning, and I was about to find out why. Diane walked into the law office wearing Marcus's Rolex, his real one, the $20,000 submariner from his company, and I knew then that she'd been in our house while I was planning his funeral. The conference room at Hartley and Associates smelled like old leather and disappointment. 23 family members crammed around a mahogany table meant for 12. 3 days since Marcus's death, and they'd gathered like hungry wolves, eyes sharp with anticipation. His mother sat in the corner, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, occasionally checking her phone. Even grief, apparently, could be performed while multitasking. Mr. Hartley, Marcus's lawyer for 15 years, cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. Marcus had been more than a client. They'd played poker together every Thursday night. Before we begin, Diane announced, standing like she was about to give a presentation, I have my own representation. A man in a suit that cost more than most people's cars entered the room. Kenneth Walsh, according to his business card, which he distributed like party favors, corporate litigation, estate disputes, family law, the kind of lawyer you hired when you plan to fight dirty. My client has documentation regarding certain verbal agreements made by Mr. Chen, Walsh said, pulling out a manila envelope with theatrical precision. We'd like these entered into the record before the reading proceeds. Mr. Hartley's eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. I wasn't aware of any amendments to Marcus's estate planning. Not amendments, Walsh smiled, shark-like, clarifications. He produced a single sheet of paper, placing it on the table like a winning poker hand. I leaned forward, and my stomach dropped through the floor. It was a handwritten note, supposedly from Marcus, dated September 15th, 2 days before he died. The writing was shaky, uncertain. I, Marcus Chen, being of sound mind, do hereby gift my 2021 BMW 540i to my sister, Diane Chen Morrison, in gratitude for her years of support. This gift is independent of my will and should be executed immediately upon my passing. The room erupted. James slammed his hand on the table. That's bullshit. Marcus would never, please. Diane's voice cut through the chaos, dripping with false sympathy. This is painful for all of us. Marcus and I had a special bond. He knew I'd always admired that car, and in his final days, he wanted to make sure... His final days? I heard my voice crack. He didn't know they were his final days. He was planning our trip to Hawaii next month. He'd just renewed his gym membership for a year. But it was the signature that made my hands shake. Marcus was left-handed, aggressively, proudly left-handed. He'd complained about it constantly. Smudged ink, backwards notebooks, scissors that never worked right. In 23 years of marriage, I'd watched him sign thousands of documents. His signature had a distinctive leftward slant, the letters leaning like they were walking against strong wind. This signature was right-handed. The slant was wrong. The pressure was wrong. Everything was wrong. That's not his signature, I said quietly, but the words carried like a gunshot. Walsh didn't miss a beat. Grief can make us see things that aren't there, Mrs. Chen. I understand this is difficult. Marcus was left-handed. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a photo from last month. Marcus signing the closing papers on our beach house, his left hand curved around the pen in that awkward way lefties do. This signature is right-handed. Look at the slant. Look at the pen pressure. Diane's face went pale, then red. Are you calling me a liar? My own brother's widow is accusing me of what? Forgery? How dare you? Furthermore, Walsh interrupted smoothly, too smoothly, like he'd rehearsed this. We have witnesses. 2 employees from Mr. Chen's office can verify they saw him write this note. Which employees? Mr. Hartley asked, making notes. We'll provide their statements in due course, Walsh deflected. Now shall we proceed with the reading? Mr. Hartley looked between us, then began reading Marcus's will, his real will, dated 3 years ago, witnessed and notarized properly. The house to me, the investments to me, his personal belongings to be distributed as I saw fit. The BMW specifically mentioned left to me. This will is outdated, Walsh interjected. Our position is that the September 15th document supersedes. Your position is noted, Mr. Hartley said coldly. However, a handwritten note doesn't override a legal will without proper witnessing and notarization. The room shifted, alliances forming and reforming. Marcus's mother suddenly developed tears, real ones this time. My baby boy, we're fighting over his things like vultures. He's not even buried yet. Rich words from a woman wearing earrings I'd bought for her last Christmas, stolen from my jewelry box sometime during the break-in. As people began to leave, Mr. Hartley asked me to stay behind. When we were alone, he pulled out another folder, this one marked confidential in red letters. Sarah, there's something else. Marcus came to see me September 14th, 3 days before he died. He was agitated, said he needed to make urgent changes to his will. My heart stopped. What kind of changes? He wanted to remove Diane entirely, said he'd discovered something about her, something that changed everything. He was supposed to come back September 18th to sign the new documents. September 18th, the day after he died. Did he say what he'd discovered? Mr. Hartley shook his head. Just that it involved money, large sums of money, and that Diane could never know he knew. The fake signature, the break-in, the missing laptop. Whatever Marcus had discovered, Diane knew he'd found out. And now I needed to find out what secret was worth forging my dead husband's signature to protect. The credit card statement was hidden inside a cookbook. Joy of cooking wedged between recipes for pot roast and apple pie, and it changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I'd been searching for Marcus's passport, needed for some bureaucratic death certificate nonsense, when the folded papers fell out like an accusation. Diane's name, Marcus's credit card, $16,000 in charges from last month alone, Nordstrom, Whole Foods, private school tuition for both her kids, a divorce attorney retainer fee. My hands shook as I unfolded more papers tucked throughout the cookbook's pages. January, $12,000, February, $18,000, March, $22,000, each statement carefully hidden, like Marcus was documenting evidence or hiding shame. The dining room table became my war room. I pulled every financial record I could find, creating a timeline of betrayal that made me physically sick. While Marcus had been telling me we couldn't afford to fix the guest bathroom, he'd been paying Diane's mortgage. While I'd been clipping coupons and shopping sales, he'd been funding her children's horseback riding lessons at $200 per session. The numbers were staggering. In just the past 5 years, $213,000. $213,000. I remembered every argument about money. The vacation to Italy I'd wanted for our 20th anniversary. Too expensive right now, honey. The art classes I'd wanted to take. Maybe next year when things are better. The charity gala tickets I'd bought, only to have Marcus insist we return them. We need to be more careful with spending, Sarah. Meanwhile, Diane had been living like royalty on our dime. Her Instagram, which I pulled up with trembling fingers, was a catalog of excess. The Hermes bags, the Mercedes SUV she'd posted about last year with the caption, "Blessed and Grateful," the weekly spa appointments, the summer house in the Hamptons she'd rented for a month. I called James, needing someone else to see this, to confirm I wasn't going insane with grief. Holy shit, he breathed, going through the statements. Sarah, this is... Marcus was funding her entire life. Look at this. He pointed to a recurring payment. $3,000 a month, every month, labeled family support. That's her mortgage. But why? My voice broke. We weren't rich. Marcus made good money, but this is why he was always stressed about finances. This is why he started taking those extra consulting jobs, working weekends. James was quiet for a moment, studying the papers. Sarah, look at when these payments started. 5 years ago. What happened 5 years ago? 5 years ago, I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. 5 years ago, I'd been going through chemo, too sick to check bank statements or question where money went. 5 years ago, I'd trusted my husband completely while poison dripped into my veins and my hair fell out in clumps. She knew, I whispered. Diane knew I was too sick to notice. But there was more. Hidden in Marcus's home office, in a locked drawer I had to break open with a hammer, I found a file labeled DCM, Diane Chen Morrison. Inside were text messages he'd printed out, maybe as evidence, maybe as reminders. The messages told a different story than simple generosity. Diane, if you don't send the money by Friday, I'll tell Sarah everything. Marcus, this has to stop. I can't keep doing this. Diane, you owe me. After what you did, you owe me for life. Marcus, that was 20 years ago. I was a different person. Diane, Sarah doesn't know that person, does she? How do you think she'd react? Blackmail. My sister-in-law had been blackmailing my husband. But for what? What had Marcus done 20 years ago, 3 years before we met, that was worth $200,000 in silence? I kept digging, my grief temporarily replaced by detective work. In a manila envelope marked insurance, I found policies I'd never seen. Our regular life insurance was there, the one we'd bought together when we bought the house. But there was another one, purchased 6 months ago, $2 million, Pacific Life Insurance Company. My name was listed as the primary beneficiary, but something was off. The paper showed signs of correction fluid, whiteout like we'd used in the old days before computers. Someone had whited out a name and written mine over it. When I held it up to the light, I could almost make out the original letters underneath. D-I-A, Diane. The original beneficiary had been Diane. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Mrs. Chen, this is Tom Morrison, Diane's husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, actually. I'd forgotten Diane was getting divorced. It explained the lawyer fees on the credit card statements. Tom, I'm not really in a state to— I know about the money. He interrupted. All of it. That's why I'm divorcing her. But there's something you need to know. Diane was at your house the morning Marcus died. I have it on our Ring doorbell camera. She left at 7:43 a.m., 20 minutes before Marcus left for work. That's impossible. Marcus didn't mention— She had a key, Sarah. She's had a key for years. And that morning, she was carrying a small paper bag, the kind pharmacies use. The room tilted, Marcus's heart medication. He took it every morning with his green smoothie. Never missed a dose. Tom, what are you saying? I'm saying you need to look at that life insurance policy very carefully. Specifically, look at who sold it to Marcus. The agent's name is on the bottom of the page. I flipped to the last page, scanning for the signature. Kenneth Walsh, the same lawyer who'd represented Diane at the will reading, who'd presented the forged note, who'd been so prepared, so smooth, so ready. Sarah, Tom's voice was grave. Diane knew about Marcus's heart condition. She knew about the medication, and she knew exactly how much that life insurance was worth. The papers scattered across my dining room table suddenly looked less like financial records and more like evidence of something much darker. What exactly had happened the morning my husband died? Tom Morrison didn't just know about the insurance policy. He'd processed it himself at Pacific Life, where he'd worked as a senior underwriter for 15 years. I discovered this at 2 a.m., Googling frantically while surrounded by manila folders and empty coffee cups, my laptop screen the only light in the dark kitchen. His LinkedIn profile smiled back at me, professional headshot and credentials listed like a resume of deception. Senior Vice President of Underwriting, specializing in high-value life insurance policies, 23 connections in common with Marcus. The phone call from earlier suddenly made horrifying sense. Tom wasn't warning me. He was covering his tracks, pointing fingers at his soon-to-be ex-wife before investigators could point them at him. I called Detective Morrison, not caring that it was the middle of the night. The insurance policy on my husband was underwritten by Diane's husband, I said without preamble. Tom Morrison. He works at Pacific Life. He approved a $2 million policy on Marcus 6 months ago. Silence on the other end, then, Mrs. Chen, are you somewhere safe? The question chilled me. Why? What do you mean? Just lock your doors. We'll have someone drive by periodically. Can you come to the station first thing in the morning? I didn't sleep. Instead, I drove to Marcus's office building at 5 a.m. before the sun came up, before grief could talk me out of what I needed to do. The security guard, Raymond, knew me from years of holiday parties and emergency document deliveries. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry about Mr. Marcus. He was a good man, real good man. Raymond, I need your help. I pulled out $500 in cash, money I'd withdrawn for funeral expenses. I need to see the security footage from September 16th, the day before Marcus died. His eyes widened at the money. Ma'am, I could lose my job. Please, I think something happened to Marcus, something that wasn't natural. Maybe it was the desperation in my voice, or maybe Raymond had his own suspicions, but he led me to the security office, a cramped room smelling of burnt coffee and old pizza. 12 monitors showed various angles of the building. He pulled up the archived footage on a dusty computer that wheezed like an old man climbing stairs. What time you looking for? Morning between 8 and noon. At 8:47 a.m. there she was, Diane wearing a Burberry trench coat I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago, carrying a cardboard tray with 2 Starbucks cups and a white bakery bag. She signed in at the front desk, smiled at the receptionist, took a visitor's badge. That's weird, Raymond muttered. Visitors supposed to be escorted, but look. He pointed at the screen. She goes straight to the elevator alone, like she knows exactly where she's going. The timestamp showed she was in the building for 43 minutes. When she emerged from the elevator at 9:30 a.m., the coffee tray was gone, but she still carried the bakery bag. Her face was different too, tighter, stressed, checking her phone repeatedly as she practically ran to the exit. Can you show me the executive floor cameras? Raymond shook his head. Those are restricted. Only Mr. Harris got access to those. Devin Harris, Marcus's business partner. I called him from the parking lot. Sarah, Jesus, it's 6 in the morning. I need to see the security footage from your floor from September 16th. Diane was there. Diane, Marcus's sister. She hasn't been to the office in years. She was there the day before he died, Devin. Please. 2 hours later, I sat in Devin's office watching footage that made my blood run cold. Diane entering Marcus's office, the door closing, no visibility inside. Marcus had always valued privacy, no glass walls for him. But the timestamp showed everything, 43 minutes in that office. And when the door finally opened, Marcus emerged first, his face white, his hand pressed to his chest. Diane followed, speaking rapidly, gesturing with her hands. Marcus shook his head repeatedly, backing away from her. I need to make a call, Devin said quietly, reaching for his phone. But I was already dialing another number. Jennifer, Marcus's secretary for 12 years, answered on the second ring. Jenny, it's Sarah Chen. I need to ask you about September 16th. Oh, honey. Her voice was thick with emotion. I've been thinking about that day ever since it happened. Tell me everything. Diane showed up without an appointment, insisted it was a family emergency. Marcus didn't want to see her, but she said it was about you, about your health, so he let her in. My health, my 5-year-old cancer history, weaponized. After she left, Jennifer continued, Marcus was different. Agitated, pacing. He kept checking his pulse, said his chest felt tight. I wanted to call an ambulance, but he said it was just stress. Then he canceled all his afternoon meetings, and Sarah, in 12 years, that man never canceled meetings. He said he needed to go see his lawyer immediately. His lawyer, Mr. Hartley? No, someone else. He wrote the name down. I heard paper rustling. Kenneth Walsh said it was about insurance matters. Kenneth Walsh, Diane's lawyer, the one who'd presented the forged note at the will reading. Jenny, did Marcus seem afraid? A long pause. Yes, he seemed terrified. He kept saying he'd made a terrible mistake trusting family. That blood didn't mean what he thought it meant. The pieces were falling into place like dominoes in reverse, building a picture I didn't want to see. The insurance policy, Tom's involvement, Diane's visit, the mysterious coffee and pastries, Marcus's chest pains, his heart medication, which he took religiously every morning, except for the morning of September 17th, when he'd collapsed during a conference call, clutching his chest, gasping for air that wouldn't come. What had been in that? Coffee Diane brought him? The roar of Marcus's BMW engine announced Diane's arrival at the funeral home like a declaration of war. She actually drove my dead husband's car to his own funeral. I stood at the entrance, greeting mourners in the black dress Marcus had loved, the one he'd said made me look like Audrey Hepburn, when that distinctive purr of German engineering cut through the morning air. The silver 540i gleamed in the September sun, freshly washed and waxed, pulling into the reserved family parking with an arrogance that took my breath away. Diane emerged from the driver's seat, my husband's seat, wearing a black Chanel suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Designer sunglasses covered her eyes, but couldn't hide the defiant tilt of her chin. She'd had her hair professionally styled that morning. Fresh manicure, full makeup. She looked like she was attending a board meeting, not her brother's funeral. The crowd of arriving mourners stopped mid-stride, watching this grotesque display. Mrs. Patterson from Marcus's book club actually gasped. Devin Harris muttered something unrepeatable under his breath. "How dare you?" I heard myself say, my voice carrying across the parking lot like a slap. Diane paused, keys, Marcus's keys with the little Stanford keychain I'd given him, dangling from her manicured fingers. "It's mine now, Sarah. Might as well get used to it. The will hasn't even been probated. That car is still part of Marcus's estate. Oh, please." She walked toward me, heels clicking on asphalt like countdown timer. We both know Marcus wanted me to have it, just like he wanted me to have so many things over the years. 200 people were now watching. Friends, colleagues, distant relatives, all frozen in a tableau of suburban horror. The funeral director, Mr. Yamamoto, stood in the doorway looking like he wanted to dissolve into the wallpaper. "Yes," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's talk about what Marcus gave you over the years. $213,000 to be exact. Every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, your children's private school tuition." Collective intake of breath from the crowd. Someone dropped their phone. It clattered on the concrete like punctuation. Diane's face went white, then red. "You don't know what you're talking about. I have the bank statements." I pulled the folded papers from my purse, holding them up like evidence in court. 5 years of payments, 5 years of you bleeding us dry while I was going through chemotherapy, thinking we couldn't afford a vacation, couldn't afford to fix our house, because my husband was secretly funding your entire life. "He owed me," Diane shrieked, all pretense of composure shattering. "After what he did, he owed me everything." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds stopped singing. "What did he do, Diane?" My voice was steady now, cold as Marcus's body and the casket inside. "What was worth $200,000 in blackmail?" James stepped forward from the crowd. "Diane, what the hell are you talking about?" She looked around wildly, realizing she'd said too much, then decided to double down. 23 years ago, before he met you, St. Marcus wasn't so perfect. He was dating my best friend, Melissa. You remember Melissa, don't you, James? The one who disappeared?" My stomach dropped. Melissa Huang. I'd heard the name once or twice, always followed by quick subject changes. "She didn't disappear," Diane continued, her voice rising. "She left, had to leave, after what Marcus did to her." "Stop." James's voice was sharp. "Melissa left because Marcus got her pregnant and paid for the abortion that went wrong," Diane shouted. "She nearly died. Had to have a hysterectomy at 24 years old. Marcus paid her $50,000 to disappear and never contact anyone again." The crowd recoiled like they'd been physically struck. Mrs. Patterson was crying. Devin had his hand over his mouth. Marcus's mother, already seated inside, thankfully couldn't hear this destruction of her son's memory. "And you've been blackmailing him about it for 5 years?" I asked, my voice strange and distant. "Using his mistake from over 2 decades ago to fund your shopping sprees?" "It wasn't blackmail. It was justice. Melissa was my friend. Marcus destroyed her life. So you destroyed ours. The laugh that came out of me was bitter, sharp. You took money meant for our retirement, our future, our life together, because of something that happened before I even knew him? Tom Morrison emerged from the crowd then, and I realized he'd been there all along, watching his soon-to-be ex-wife immolate herself in public. "Tell them about the insurance policy, Diane," he said quietly. "Tell them about your plan with Walsh." Diane spun toward him. "Shut up, Tom. You don't know anything. I know you visited Marcus the day before he died. I know you brought him coffee. I know you and Walsh had been planning something for months." The funeral director finally found his voice. "Perhaps we should move inside." "No," I said. "Let everyone hear this. Let them all know who Diane Chen Morrison really is." Diane's lawyer, Kenneth Walsh, chose that moment to arrive, practically running from his Porsche. "Diane, don't say another word." But she was beyond saving, beyond reasoning. She turned to me, eyes wild, mascara starting to run. "You want to play this game, Sarah? Fine. I have letters, emails, details about Marcus's past that would destroy everything. His reputation, his legacy, the way everyone in there remembers him. Back off the estate, give me what I'm owed, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you were married to." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun, but I'd already made my decision about what mattered more: Marcus's perfect memory or the truth. The wedding album was in the last place I'd thought to look. Marcus's gym bag, wrapped in his sweaty running clothes like he'd been carrying our memories with him during every morning jog. I found it 3 hours after the funeral, after everyone had gone home, after Diane's threats had cleared the parking lot like a bomb scare. The house felt hollow, echoing with the absence of condolence casseroles and whispered conversations. I'd been searching for Marcus's backup drives, hoping to recover his laptop files, when I spotted his Nike bag shoved behind the water heater in the garage. The album fell out when I unzipped it, landing on the concrete floor with a thud that made my heart skip. Our faces, young and impossibly optimistic, smiled up from the cover. But something was wrong. The binding was loose, pages shifted. Marcus had hidden something inside. A manila envelope sealed with medical tape. My name written across it in Marcus's careful handwriting with a date. September 16th, 11:47 p.m., the night before he died, hours after Diane's visit to his office. Inside were 3 things that shattered my world and rebuilt it in the space of a single breath. First, my medical records from 5 years ago, but not the ones I knew about. These were different. Oncology reports I'd never seen. Genetic testing results that made my hands shake. A highlighted paragraph that blurred through my tears. Patient shows markers for Li-Fraumeni syndrome. Extremely high probability of cancer recurrence. Recommended for immediate genetic counseling and aggressive preventive measures. Stress is a significant trigger for syndrome activation. Psychological stability critical for prognosis. Li-Fraumeni syndrome. I Googled it with trembling fingers. A rare genetic disorder. People with it have a 90% chance of developing cancer in their lifetime. Multiple cancers, early onset. The survival statistics made me close my laptop. The second document was a printout of emails between Marcus and Diane, dated 3 months after my cancer went into remission. Diane: "I know about Sarah's test results. Tom saw them at Pacific Life when you applied for increased coverage." Marcus: "Those results are confidential. Tom violated HIPAA." Diane: "Do you want her to know? The stress alone could trigger recurrence. The doctors said so." Marcus: "What do you want?" Diane: "Financial security for my children. They're your blood too, Marcus." Marcus: "This is extortion." Diane: "This is family helping family. $3,000 a month, and Sarah never has to know she's living with a death sentence." $3,000 a month, exactly what he'd been paying her. The family support payments that started right after my recovery. But it was the third item that broke me completely. Marcus's letter, written in the careful penmanship of someone fighting to control shaking hands. "My beloved Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and the truth can't hurt you anymore. Or maybe it can, but at least I won't be there to see it, which makes me a coward even in death. 5 years ago, I did something unforgivable. Not the thing with Melissa, though that haunts me too, but something worse. I accessed your complete medical records through my insurance connections. I told myself it was to better understand your treatment, to be a better husband. But I was really just terrified of losing you. What I found destroyed me. Lee-Fraumeni syndrome. The oncologist had run the test without telling you, waiting for the right time, the right way to break news that would change everything. But then you went into remission and he decided to wait, to let you heal first, to give you time to be strong enough. I should have told you. You had the right to know. But Sarah, you were so happy. For the first time in months, you were laughing again, planning our future, talking about traveling, about growing old together. How could I be the one to tell you that growing old might not be possible? Then Diane found out. Tom, her husband, processed our insurance adjustment, saw your records illegally. She came to me with an ultimatum. Pay her, or she'd tell you in the cruelest way possible. She had it all planned. She'd do it during a family dinner, in front of everyone, casually mentioning your condition like everyone already knew. So I paid. Every month I paid. Not just for her silence, but for your peace. For every day you woke up without fear. For every moment you lived fully instead of waiting to die. The money meant nothing. We could always make more money. But time? Peace? The ability to wake up without scanning your body for symptoms? That was priceless. I know you'll hate me for this, for choosing for you, for stealing your agency. But I need you to know, every payment I made to Diane was a love letter to you. Every dollar was a day of your happiness I was trying to buy. The morning Diane visited my office, she wanted more. The divorce from Tom meant she needed a lump sum. She wanted me to change the life insurance beneficiary to her, temporarily, she said, just until she could refinance her house. She brought coffee in Danish, your favorite Danish, she made sure to mention, and suggested that if I didn't comply, you might accidentally eat something with a note inside. A medical report, perhaps, baked right into a pastry. The coffee tasted wrong. Within minutes, my chest was tight. She'd put something in it. Not enough to kill immediately, she said, just enough to stress my heart. A warning. She had more, she said. Stronger doses. Tom had access to things at the insurance company, documents that needed signing, pills that could disappear. I'm writing this at home now, knowing I need to see the lawyer tomorrow. My chest still hurts. My left arm is numb. I should go to the hospital, but if I do, there will be questions, tests, police, and then you'll know everything. If something happens to me, know this. Diane killed me. Maybe not directly, but she killed me. The stress, the fear, what she put in that coffee, my heart couldn't take it. The family history of heart disease she knew about. The medication she knew I needed. But also know this. I would do it all again. Every payment, every lie, every single day of your ignorance was worth my life. I love you more than truth, more than money, more than my own heartbeat. Forever yours, Marcus P.S. Check the garage wall behind my tool pegboard. I've been recording my conversations with Diane for 2 years. Everything is there. The letter fell from my numb fingers, drifting to the floor like a leaf in autumn. Marcus hadn't betrayed me. He'd died protecting me. And Diane had murdered him for money. Behind Marcus's tool pegboard, sealed in a waterproof container that smelled like motor oil and sawdust, were 23 USB drives containing 2 years of recorded conversations that would send Diane to prison. I sat on the garage floor at 3 a.m., laptop balanced on a paint can, listening to my husband document his own murder in real time. His voice, tinny through the hidden recorder, narrated Diane's escalating threats with the methodical precision of someone building a legal case or writing his own obituary. March 15th, 4:47 p.m., Marcus's recorded voice noted. Diane demanded an additional $10,000 for her son's summer camp. When I refused, she said, "Stress kills people with heart conditions, Marcus. Would be a shame if Sarah learned about her diagnosis during a particularly difficult time." June 2nd, 2:15 p.m. Diane mentioned she knows my cardiologist. Says Tom golfs with him. Wondering if my prescription dosages are correct. Veiled threat about medication tampering. September 12th, 8:30 p.m. Diane said Tom has access to compounds at the insurance lab, things that mimic heart attack symptoms, untraceable after 48 hours. By sunrise, I had 17 hours of recordings transcribed, organized, and copied onto multiple drives. Detective Morrison arrived at 7 a.m. with a forensic computer specialist and 2 other officers. They transformed my dining room into a mobile investigation unit, laptops and recording equipment covering the table where Marcus and I had shared 23 years of dinners. "This is enough for arrest warrants," Morrison said after 3 hours of listening, his face grim. "Extortion, blackmail, conspiracy, fraud. The forged will document alone is a felony. What about murder?" My voice sounded hollow, disconnected. "The coffee cup from his office was thrown away, without physical evidence of poisoning?" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Diane had been smart about that part. The FBI got involved when they discovered Tom's insurance fraud. He'd been creating false policies for years, collecting premiums on dead people, using his position to alter beneficiaries. The scope was staggering. Diane wasn't his only victim, just his most profitable. We planned the arrests for maximum impact, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Diane had purchased plane tickets to Costa Rica, a country with no extradition treaty. Tom had been moving money to offshore accounts. They were flight risks with capital letters. The graduation ceremony at Preston Academy was the perfect venue. Public contained with security already present. Diane's son, Marcus's nephew, was valedictorian. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The boy's entire education paid for with blood money? I watched from my car as they walked into the auditorium. Diane in a white Oscar de la Renta dress that cost more than most people's cars. Tom in a suit he'd probably bought with his fraudulent insurance money. They looked like the perfect, successful couple. The American dream wrapped in designer clothing. The arrests happened during the reception, after the boy's speech about integrity and hard work. FBI agents in blue windbreakers moved through the crowd of parents and graduates, like sharks through a school of fish. Diane saw them coming, tried to run in her Louboutin heels, but there was nowhere to go. "Diane Chen Morrison, you're under arrest for extortion, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder." The handcuffs clicked with a sound like justice. Her son stood frozen, diploma still in his hand, watching his mother's destruction. The other parents backed away like shame was contagious. Someone was live streaming on Instagram. By nightfall, it would have 3 million views. Tom didn't run. He sat down on a folding chair and put his head in his hands, looking almost relieved. "I tried to stop her," he said to no one in particular. "After Marcus died, I tried to stop her." But the revelations weren't over. Mr. Hartley called me that evening with news that made me sit down hard on my kitchen floor. "Sarah, I found something. Marcus created a trust 2 years ago, completely separate from your joint assets. He funded it with his consulting work, the weekend jobs you thought were excessive." "How much?" I asked, though money felt meaningless now. $1.3 million. It's specifically designated for your medical care, with instructions for preventive treatment, genetic counseling, the best oncologists in the country. He named me as trustee to keep it hidden from both you and Diane. She never knew it existed. Marcus had been playing 3-dimensional chess, while Diane thought they were playing checkers. Every weekend he'd missed, every family dinner he'd skipped for work, he'd been building my safety net. "There's also this," Hartley continued, "a letter to the prosecutor, written and notarized a year ago requesting leniency for Diane's children if she was ever caught. He didn't want them punished for their mother's crimes." That night, Diane called from county jail. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won over wisdom. "Are you happy now?" Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual venom. "My children saw me arrested. Their lives are ruined. Your children are victims too, Diane. Marcus knew that. He left instructions to protect them." Silence. Then, "What?" "The trust includes education funds for your kids, full college tuition, living expenses. Marcus arranged it all, even knowing what you were doing to him." She started crying then, ugly sobs that might have moved me if I hadn't heard my husband's recorded voice, documenting her threats just hours earlier. "He was always too good," she choked out. "Too good for you, too good for all of us." "No," I corrected. He was exactly good enough to protect everyone he loved, even from themselves. The prosecutor offered me a choice: pursue the full charges, including attempted murder, which could mean 25 to life for Diane, or accept a plea deal for just the financial crimes. 5 to 7 years, out in 3 with good behavior. The graduation program was still on my coffee table, Diane's son's bright face smiling from the cover. Marcus would have chosen mercy, but Marcus was dead, and I had to decide what justice looked like when love and vengeance occupied the same space in my heart. The BMW still smells like Marcus. 6 months later, his cologne lingers in the leather seats like a ghost that refuses to leave, and I refuse to exorcise it. I drive it every Tuesday to my genetic counseling appointments at Emory. Windows down, jazz playing on the premium sound system he spent 3 weeks researching before buying. The car Diane killed him for has become my sanctuary. The last space where Marcus's presence feels real, tangible, preserved in the adjustment of the driver's seat. He'll never change again. Dr. Williams, my oncologist, says my prognosis is excellent. The Lee-Fromeni syndrome Marcus died to hide from me is no longer a death sentence, but a manageable condition. Preventive surgeries, vigilant monitoring, lifestyle modifications, all the things I could have been doing for 5 years if I'd known. The bitter irony is that the stress of Marcus's death triggered nothing. My body, apparently, is stronger than both Marcus and Diane believed. Knowledge is power, Dr. Williams told me during our first appointment. Your husband thought he was protecting you, but secrets like these, they protect no one. The trial had been swift. Diane, faced with Marcus's recordings and the FBI's mounting evidence against Tom, took the plea deal I offered. Not out of mercy, I'm not that evolved, but out of practicality. Her children needed at least one parent, even a flawed one. 5 years for extortion and fraud. 3 years probation. Full restitution of the $213,000 plus interest. 600 hours of community service at a hospice, caring for the dying. The judge, a woman who'd lost her own husband young, added that last part without my asking. Perhaps, she'd said, looking directly at Diane, caring for those facing mortality will teach you the value of the time you stole from your brother. Tom got 12 years federal time for insurance fraud. The scope of his crimes dwarfed Diane's personal cruelty. 43 fraudulent policies, $6 million stolen from grieving families. They divorced while both wearing orange jumpsuits, signing papers in separate rooms of the county jail. Their children live with Tom's mother now. I send checks monthly, not legally obligated, but morally committed. Marcus's ghost would haunt me if those kids suffered for their parents' sins. The boy, the valedictorian, sends me thank you cards in perfect penmanship. He never mentions his mother. The Marcus Chen Foundation launched last month with the $1.3 million from his secret trust as seed money. We provide financial support for families navigating critical illness, not just medical bills, but the hidden costs. Grocery delivery when you're too sick to shop. Gas cards for endless hospital trips. House cleaning services when standing feels impossible. All the things I'd needed during chemo that Marcus had quietly handled. Jennifer, Marcus's secretary, runs it now. She quit her corporate job the day after testifying at Diane's trial, said she needed to do something meaningful with her remaining years. We've helped 83 families so far. Every check we write feels like Marcus's hand reaching through death to lift someone else's burden. I sold our house last month. Too many ghosts, too many empty spaces shaped like Marcus. The beach house we'd just bought, our retirement dream, became my primary residence. I wake to ocean sounds now instead of silence. The salt air has healing properties, or maybe that's just what I tell myself when grief threatens to drown me at 3 a.m. The wedding album sits on my new mantle, no longer hidden, no longer a source of pain. Those 2 young people in the photos didn't know what was coming. The cancer, the betrayals, the secrets, the death. But they loved each other. That was real. Even if everything else got complicated, corrupted, confused, the love was real. I keep finding pieces of Marcus everywhere. Notes in books he'd been reading. Voice memos on his recovered laptop reminding himself to buy my favorite tea. Calendar alerts for date nights we'll never have. Each discovery is a small death, a fresh wound, a bittersweet gift. Today, on the 6-month anniversary of his death, I drove the BMW to Westview Cemetery. The headstone is simple, black granite with gold lettering, just his name and dates. No beloved husband or devoted father. Those words felt too small for what he was, what he did. I brought Boston cream donuts, his favorite, the ones he'd brought home that last morning. I sat on the grass, September sun warming my shoulders, and told him everything. About the diagnosis I'm facing with eyes wide open. About Diane in prison, finding redemption or at least exhaustion in service to the dying. About the foundation saving families the way he'd tried to save me. About the BMW I'll never sell, because it's the last thing his hands touched before his heart stopped. I understand now, I said to the granite and grass. You carried my death sentence for 5 years so I could live. You turned yourself into my shield, my buffer against truth. A cardinal landed on his headstone then. Marcus would have said it was just coincidence, but I choose to believe otherwise. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for loving me more than honesty. Thank you for dying to keep me whole. Thank you for the foundation that will help thousands. Thank you for 23 imperfect, complicated, beautiful years. The drive home was quiet except for the jazz and the engine's purr. In the passenger seat where Marcus used to sit, I'd placed a single white rose. Not for death, but for new beginnings, because that's what Marcus's true inheritance was. Not money or houses or BMWs, but the knowledge that sometimes the greatest love is shown not in what we share, but in what we bear alone to protect those we cherish. Even unto death, especially unto death,